it's not just about the paycheck. And I mean, I think that a vast majority of men see that as central, and maybe it is central. Maybe it's the most important thing. It's definitely measurable, and it's definitely important. You need to have financial security, but financial security is necessary, but not sufficient. You also need emotional security. You need, and that's probably the harder and more vital job.
Welcome to Gap to Gig, the show for dads navigating the in-between season when work, identity, and priorities start asking different questions. Here we talk about what that season looks like and how to move through it with intention. I'm your host, Michael Jacobs, and today's guest is Shaun Dawson. Shaun's a husband, father of two, tech leader, and the host of the Raising Men podcast, where he's asking a question a lot of dads quietly wrestle with. What does it really mean to raise boys into strong, emotionally grounded men in today's world? What I appreciate about Shaun's approach is that he's not positioning himself as the expert with all the answers. He's a dad doing the work in real time. He's exploring character, emotional resilience, digital life, modern masculinity, and what leadership at home actually looks like when you walk through the door after a long day at work. Shaun, I'm really glad you're here. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
My pleasure. So you've said something to me before that really stuck with me, which was none of the work matters more than who my kids experience when I walk through the door. So I kind of want to start there with you. When you think about the phrase raising men, the name of your podcast, what does that mean to you personally right now? Not in theory, but like in your actual home.
Yeah, no, I love that question. And I think it moves, beyond the achievement metrics that we obsess over. And we obsess over those achievement metrics for our egos. It is, we'll make excuses that I want to make a lot of money to provide for my family. And that's a value, by the way. That's not nothing. But those sorts of things are just kind of ways of measuring, and they're not the core thing. And you really want to be focused on character development. And in my home, that really amounts to managing tensions. I helping my son navigate the tension between his natural drive for independence and his need for connection. And oftentimes happening at the same time. It's about teaching him to be a protector, right, who makes people feel safe, right? And practically it's about modeling how to handle, for me, I struggle with this. So for me, it's about how to model frustration, handling frustration without dropping into what I call the Conan the Barbarian brain.
Yeah. Yeah, picture that. I can picture that completely. Do you feel like your sense to want to protect in a way, does that help or hinder when your son is trying to become more dependent or more independent? Sorry.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Right. Like most things. And this was one of the fundamental things that I've realized, especially since starting this podcast and talking to a lot of people who are way smarter than I am, but I started this realization when I first became a dad, which is that everything is attention. And so if anyone ever comes to you and says, it's this way, and it's, there's no other way to be, that you should always look for the opposite of that, and then figure out how to manage that tension. That has never been true. And so there's this tension between connection and independence. And my son, wants to be somewhere on that spectrum at all times. And where he wants to be, I need to figure out how to meet him there.
Right.
And sometimes that's really, really hard. One of the tensions that I deal with constantly with my own kids is they will try to manipulate me by making me feel bad, or by pressing my buttons, or dropping me into Conan brain. It's like they're pushing my buttons to see how I react. And if I react in a stable way, then they'll feel safe and they'll feel connected. And if I react the way out of frustration and I'm angry and I yell at them, then they won't feel that way. And it's almost like they're trying to prove that that I'm a monster, right? It's like it is. They're so good at it. And part of my problem is I am not an angry guy at all. In my whole life, I've never really had to deal with a whole lot of anger. And yet my kids can push my buttons in a way that I've never experienced before. And so I think, to some extent, if I had to deal with anger, unhealthy anger at a younger age, I would have skills now that I would have developed over time. But instead, I've never really developed those skills. And so having my kids press my buttons in a way has been a new experience for me. And I experience anger that I'd never experienced before. And so I've had to learn to deal with it.
That's interesting that you're in this new experience, essentially, right? As a father, that you weren't typically, I think as a father, we model what we know, what we've seen, right? And
Yeah.
our kids do the same, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't have the same experiences growing up that necessarily your kids had to kind of figure out what is the right reaction, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah.
And you found it to be important to model certain reactions, certain behaviors back to your children.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you say that you feel like they're always trying to push your buttons, but in essence, to me, it feels like they're testing the boundaries because they're going to model what your reaction is down the road, right?
You're right. They're running
right. So
little
it's like,
experiments.
right. If you react in a calmer manner, most likely they're going to be like, okay, that is the way I'm supposed to react in this situation. If you react like Conan the Barbarian, they're going to think, oh, well, it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
Let me see how much further I can take it. Right. And just keep building on that. So it's really interesting because you didn't have that experience where there was a lot of Conan the Barbarian type reactions to you as a child, or that you experienced that much.
Yeah.
Now you're like, okay, my kids are exploring the world and it's different times. They've had different experiences, been exposed to different things. Maybe not the same things that I did. So how do I react to that in a way that is healthy for them, that models behaviors that work for them? Because in essence, that's what they're going to model back to you. So it's almost a self-perpetuating, I don't know what the right word is, maybe prophecy, that like, if you respond very angrily, then they're probably going to respond in a similar way, and it'll keep building that more and more tension, right? Whereas if you respond in a more calm way, you would hope that they are going to model back to you calm behavior, and you perpetuate a more calm environment.
That's exactly right.
But at the same time, you're also trying to protect them, right? So you have to kind of show them what's right, what's wrong, and not always is the response supposed to be calm.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like, there's that tension. I think what's interesting to me also, what you said is that, like you had mentioned earlier, that someone could be like, oh, this is the only way to do it. This is the way you have to do it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us don't live in the extremes, right? We live somewhere in between, which is what I think you're getting here for. Like, your kids are somewhere in the middle of the extremes of it has to be this way or it has to be that way. Usually it's like, okay, they might be a little bit more energetic today, a little less energetic tomorrow. They're not typically operating. Sometimes it happens, right? Where the kids or yourself as a father, like have those extreme reactions, right?
Yeah.
But we don't typically live there.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that really interesting. I'm wondering, like, you're a tech leader, you're a dad of two, right? So you have a son and a daughter, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
How has fatherhood reshaped the way you think about ambition and success now?
Yeah, this is another thing that I really struggle with. And I had children late in life. My son was born when I was 45, and he's 7 now. And my daughter is 3. And, for me, when I was younger, ambition was kind of this straight line towards, towards output, towards status, towards financial reward. And now I'm a lot more focused on trying to upgrade my own operating system so that my kids don't inherit my bugs, right? And you mentioned, like, when I was growing up, the world was so different. It might as well be a foreign planet than from the one that my son is going to graduate into. And it's my job to make sure that he can thrive in the world as it is today and as it will be when he comes of age. And I think maybe it was a little bit easier, 50 years ago, because the world didn't change as fast as it did and technology didn't come online as quickly as it did. And we didn't have the kinds of things that could short circuit our brains the way we do now. But I really do think that we need to, my son, in order to thrive in the culture that he will graduate into, will need an upgraded operating system over the one that that got installed in me. And the best way to install an upgraded operating system in your children is to have one yourself and to model that behavior. That's 80, 90% of it. And so, and true success is not winning at work while losing at home, right? Winning at work is part of it, but you need to build this strong base from which your kids can eventually launch into their own lives and thrive. And so what I ended up kind of reframing what it meant to be a provider. Yeah. It's not just about the paycheck. And I mean, I think that a vast majority of men see that as central, and maybe it is central. Maybe it's the most important thing. It's definitely measurable and it's definitely important. You need to have financial security, but financial security is necessary, but not sufficient. You also need emotional security. You need, and that's probably the harder and more vital job. And it doesn't come as naturally to men as I think the financial security aspect does.
Right. And it seems like, from what you're saying, that the ambition and road to success goes from being almost a singular focus or being focused on yourself. And then when you become a father, or even before you become a father, if you have a partner, it's like it starts to expand. Your world of ambition is for more than just what you can accomplish, right? You want to see what the next generation is going to accomplish. You want to set your family up, the people that matter to you most, set them up for success and give them opportunity, right?
Yeah. I heard a quote one time, which was that, and I don't know where it came from, but it's that your kids are the only people that you want to be more successful than you.
Yep.
I think that's right.
Yeah, certainly. For me, at least, it's like, yes, I hope my kids, and I feel like I will have the most success when my kids have more success.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Like that is the ultimate dream, ultimate goal for me.
Yeah. Same here. But there's a tension there too, right? Because, I have this experience. I struggle with sports. My son is really into basketball, and he loves being good at things, and he's pretty good. I mean, he's naturally good at a lot of things. He's pretty athletic, but he's barely played basketball. He should not be expected to be able to sink a basket every time and to do as well as a lot of the other kids that have been playing for years.
Right.
And yet he does. And so he gets demoralized about it. And I really want him to succeed because sports has been such a foundational and valuable part of my life. And I didn't get into it until later in life. And I wish I'd gotten into it earlier. And so I want him to catch the bug. But I find him getting really frustrated at, when he's not really participating in, or he's not listening to his coach, or he's lying on the ground. And I start getting frustrated. And a lot of that frustration has to do with my own ego. I want him to be good at basketball because I want that for myself. I want to be the father of an elite athlete. Well, sure. That is counterproductive, actually. It's likely to get him. It's likely to produce the opposite. It won't generate the passion. It will likely generate resentment and all those things. I recognize that intellectually, but man, is it difficult to connect that to the sense of frustration that I feel when I watch him floundering around on the floor, not listening to his coach.
Yeah, I think that's fairly common occurrence, right? And I've coached youth sports before, and I've seen it, right? Some of these parents, I mean, they're living through their kids
Yeah.
in many instances.
Yeah.
And for me, like when I define success for my kids, it's not necessarily win or lose. It's more around happiness and health and doing good, like expanding their horizons.
Yeah.
To me, that is more success. Like I know my kids aren't going to be professional athletes.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I know they're not going to solve cancer, cure cancer. I'm okay with that, right? Like
Yeah.
I will celebrate the parents of the kids who end up curing cancer. More power to you, but like I know there's certain limits.
Yeah.
And to me, I'd rather my kids be happy than win a game. Right. And I think there goes a lot more goes into making sure the kids are happy. And part of that is making sure they do feel safe, right? Like you want that protection
Yeah.
mode in there, but it also means allowing them to explore the things that are of interest to them.
Yeah.
And, today the interest might be basketball. Tomorrow the interest might be art. The day after that, the interest might be music. The day after that, it might be hockey. I mean, it could be,
Yeah.
right. They're exploring, they're learning.
Right. And it's appropriate for them to do that. And at some point, maybe they will catch the bug and maybe they will get really passionate about something and really want to excel and start watching it on TV and all those things. Great. All you can really do is prepare the soil for that.
Right. Right. Like with my son, like he did not like watching sports on TV when he was younger.
Yeah.
When he became a teenager, there was like a switch that went off, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now it's like he watches every game, every hockey game, every football game, every basketball game he can watch. Right. He found that interest later, but he explored a lot of different things in the process of getting there.
Yeah.
And were they things that I was interested in? Sometimes they weren't, right? But at some point I had to just let go.
Yeah.
Right. I had to let him figure it out in a safe way. Right. Like not going to throw him into football without getting him equipment or, just have him start playing in the backyard and tackling kids without knowing what, good technique is.
Yeah.
But, if that was what he was interested in, okay, we'll try it out for a little bit. Right. And see where it goes. Because once he tries it, he got into hockey, but the first time he ever tried hockey, he hated it. He left the rink. He's like, I don't want to do this.
Wow.
A couple of years later, he's like, I want to try this again. And he did it. And that became his passion. And that was all he did.
Yeah.
It's like, you just never know.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. I could control what he does. I could be like, no, you're not playing hockey. You're only going to do basketball for the rest of your life or for the rest of your childhood. Like that's the only thing I'll take you to.
Yeah.
What good is that going to do him? Right. Like what opportunity is that actually giving him?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I like how you understand, you recognize, right? Like I think a lot of parents don't recognize the position that they're in and they just become so overzealous, right? And they're just like, my kid's got to be great at basketball. He's got to practice. He's got to do this. He's got to do that. I'm going to keep taking him to the gym. I'm going to make sure he, takes 100 shots a day, whatever it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
You recognize like, yeah, I like to see him succeed. I like to see him have fun playing basketball, but if he loses interest in that, I think you recognize that, yeah, maybe he's got to try some other stuff.
Yeah. There's something that is really frustrating about watching your kids, and it's almost like you get to go back in time and live your life over again. And if you did, then you would do this thing. And then you want them to do this thing because you can see into the future and you can recognize that if you just got really passionate about basketball and because you know that you have it within you, and that if you did 100 shots a day, that you early enough and you achieved enough early on, then you'd start getting on the good teams and all of that. And that would really propel you. And that would change your life in these ways that you can recognize from looking back at your own life. And so it's almost like you're trying to, that's like almost literally trying to live through your children.
Right.
And that is a lot to put on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think some of that frustration perhaps that we feel in those situations is a lack of control? Because like when we were kids, like we felt like we controlled like what we did, right? And your kid probably wants to be like, I want to play basketball today, but I only want to play for 20 minutes, I don't want to do, take 100 shots in the gym. I want to play in an actual game or something, right?
Yeah.
And you can't control whether he goes and takes an extra 100 shots every day. But do you think there's some element of letting go of control that kind of feeds this? I don't know if I want to call it frustration or not, but
Yeah.
disconnect.
I think that's definitely part of it. I think that, I mean, for me personally, it's my ego seeping out. There's some aspect of me that wants my child to succeed for him. And there's another part of me that wants my child to succeed because I want to be the parent of a child who succeeds.
Right.
Because what it says about me. And I think when I experience frustration about that, I think that it's because of that second thing.
Yep.
Why would I experience frustration if he's not going to succeed, if he doesn't care about succeeding? I won't experience frustration about that. I might think that's a mistake, but he makes mistakes all the time. Like, that's good. Mistakes are good.
Right.
But I do feel frustration when I see that happening. And so that means that the frustration is born out of this sense that I want him to succeed because I want to be the father of a succeeding child. And even that can be broken down into, I want that because I want people to see me as a success as a parent. But there's a healthy aspect of that too, which is that I do want to be successful as a parent. I want my child to thrive. And if that means that he's going to thrive by being a professional basketball player, and he could be a professional basketball player, he's going to be probably 6'7" and enormous. Like, that's not physically, he could do it. Or he could be a professional beach volleyball player like his mom was. Like, that's in our DNA. So it's not out of the question. If it were out of the question, then maybe I would think about it differently.
Sure.
Right? Because, okay, I mean, if my son is going to be 5'6", and then I don't have to worry about him being like trying to do that. And that's vanishingly rare for people of that stature. But it's actually within reach, and so it's harder. And it's harder, and that especially brings my ego into it. What kind of father am I if I have a son with that kind of potential and I don't cultivate it? I mean, that my head goes there. And that is, I think that's profoundly unhealthy.
Yeah. It's, you mentioned ego, right? Like you said, part of this is ego, and part of this is, there's this unhealthy feeling that you have to put him in a certain direction because he already has certain traits necessarily, right? But we don't know what our kids' identities are truly going to be, right? Like 10, 20 years from now, who are they? I don't think we know that when they're 7 or 17.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's going to be different when they're 27 or 37. Right. And I think, but also as dads, we have this issue of identity also, right? Like you talked about ego, right? And like how we kind of feed ourselves on that a bit as we're raising our kids. There's also this ego around our identity at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to crush it at work. We want to make as much money as we can. We want to get the promotions, or we want to be able to sell our business, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
How has identity worked for you as you've traversed both the work side of your life, and because you're in technology, you've been successful in your career. How's identity played a role in both your career and now as a father, and kind of what's the challenge around that for you? What has been the challenge?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that can happen if you're a high achiever is that you can conflate output with identity, and you can you can talk about, I am of value because I make X amount of money, right?
Right.
And that, like, you might not even be willing to admit that out loud, but you feel it inside. And I think that, the key to that identity question is about reversing that. I make X amount of money as a result of my character, or partially as a result of my character. It's also a function of a bunch of stuff that I don't control. I happen to be born in maybe one of the best times to ever be born in the richest country on the planet, at where I would come of age at one of the greatest expansions in technological capability that has ever happened in the shortest period of time. I mean, I have been so unbelievably fortunate. And I think if you and then I've actually also managed to, I've pissed away a bunch of opportunity too, but I've managed to capture a lot of it. And that's so I was fortunate to be in a position where there's a lot of fertile soil around me, and then I worked hard to make sure that I tended the soil and all that. And so, but your output isn't your worth, isn't your value. It's a way of measuring some of that stuff, but your value is really deeply rooted in your character. And if you don't get to come home and experience that, where you don't get to come home to a family that is thrilled to see you and feels safe and feels provided for, and just, your kids run into your arms. When you experience that, you realize, wait a minute, yeah, this is what all this is for. And so, and then when you realize that, if you think deeply about it, what you ought to do is optimize for that somehow.
Yep.
And like, how do I get more times when I get to lay in bed and cuddle with my kids?
Right.
And oftentimes for me, I work from home, and I have worked from home for 20 years, a long time. And so it's really, really difficult to create that, I'm just going to leave office at the office, because there is no office. The office is upstairs, my home. And so it's real easy to feel like the bedtime with the kids is a distraction from what's really important. I need to go out there and do my work and make money and whatever. And I do feel that way. But then, especially in times like these, where I'm having conversations like this with people like you, I realize, and I try to remain present about this, is there are a very finite number of times when my kids are going to want me to read to them and cuddle them in bed. It's going to go away, not when they're 18, but when they're 10 or 12 or 11 or whatever. It is, my son's 7. That was a blink of an eye ago. And he's not going to want the hugs and the kisses and the cuddles and the books. I don't know, in 4 years? Half as much time as he's been alive.
Right.
And when that's gone, the last time I read to him in his bed, there's something that will die. That's part of me that's gone forever.
Yeah, it's you really hit on it for me. The last times, we always celebrate the first times.
Right.
The first time, they read on their own. The first time that they walk. The first time that they get a haircut. The first time that whatever it may be. Right.
Yeah.
We never get a chance to celebrate the last times,
Yeah.
or very rarely. I mean, graduations, sure.
Yeah,
right? But you don't.
Yeah, you don't get to
You don't
know
get
that
to
it's
celebrate the
last
time that you read to your son and tucked him in bed, right? You don't get the to celebrate the last time that your daughter asked you to have a tea party with her or
Right.
whatever it may be, right? Like those things just they go,
Yeah.
right? And I think what I love about what you're saying is that your identity, yeah, you can use results to tell the story of your identity, but that's not what your identity is made of. Your
Yeah.
identity is made up of these moments and of your character in these
That's
moments
such a good way
that
to put it.
matter to you, right? Like what makes you happy, what makes the people you care about happy, what makes them feel protected and feel included. Those are the things that make up your identity. And I love how you bring that perspective because it's so easy for a lot of dads like myself to get wrapped up in our work as our identity, right?
Yeah.
And how successful we are in our careers, in our jobs.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the job gives you money. You need money. Yes, you need to earn a living. But that doesn't give you time with your kids. It doesn't give you time with your spouse. It doesn't give you time with your friends. It doesn't give you those moments that make you feel like who you are. Right. And that is, at the end of the day, that's your identity
Yeah.
of like how you take on those situations.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is very easy to get lost in work. Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge with a lot of dads that I talk to is like, okay, well, I've been working, 40, 60, 80 hours a week all my adult life. Now what do I do? I've got these kids at home. I would like to spend more time with them, but my whole world is wrapped up in my job. That's what I've been doing for the last 10, 20, 30 years. But now what do I,
Yeah.
how do I figure out a way to do both? Right. And I think you hit on the really important part there, which is you only get so much time with these people. Your job's still going to be there.
Yep.
Right. So like, even if you leave the office, whether your office is at home or elsewhere at a certain time every day, just so you can have dinner with your kids, right? Because you only have so many dinners before they're off to college, they're off into their adult lives and they're doing their own thing, right? That is part of your identity of who you are because that's what makes you happy. That's what makes you whole, I think. I just love how you put that all into perspective of like, yes, you can measure the results by your paycheck, by your earnings,
Yeah.
but that's not going to identify who you are.
Yeah.
You're not going to be known as the guy with $130,000 salary, right?
Yeah. Or if you
It's like,
are, you're not going to be happy that that's how you.
right.
You.
There goes Shaun, the $250,000 a year guy.
That's right.
No.
Yeah.
There goes Shaun, the guy with a 7-year-old boy, a 4-year-old daughter, and he loves to get killed by his wife in beach volleyball because she used to be a professional player, right? Like that is how you identify yourself, right? And that's how people will know you.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to lose that perspective. So I love how you just brought that all back together of like, this is really what's important, right? We knock down all the stuff that's out there of like what we do every day. Really, this is what matters.
Yeah. And then the second component of that is so important is that the number of dinners that you're going to have is way less than you think it is.
Yep.
I mean, way less. The number of bedtimes. I mean, bedtime is a big thing around here because by default, I would hate it. I actually hate all the mechanics around bedtime. I hate trying to get my kids to brush their teeth. I hate trying to help them, get them to get dressed for bed. If there's a bath or a shower involved, that's a whole other nightmare. I wouldn't by default particularly enjoy reading books to them. Although I really do love the connection time and all of that. And I do like telling them stories. I make up stories for them. And I was talking to a buddy of mine and I was like, oh my gosh, my kids, they're just relentless. And, they're always asking for these stories. And it's so much effort to come up with these stories. And I'm coming up with these stories, right? It's like a ton of mental effort. And I'm just like, I'm actually tapped out trying to make up these stories. My friend goes, dude, you realize they haven't heard any stories. Like if you made up Cinderella, they wouldn't know that you didn't make that up. And I was like, what? Like, it didn't even occur to me that I could do
Right.
that. And actually, I wouldn't do that because we don't lie to our kids. I wouldn't want to, like, at some point they will discover that was a story that they thought I made up and that they didn't. I never want that realization to happen. And so I would cop to it, but I just, I can't believe it didn't. I didn't think of that. Like, well,
Right.
yes, I could just tell a different story. Because what they really want is the performance. They don't care that it's being made up. And but yeah, the fact is though that it's not forever that I will be in a position to tell them stories at bedtime. And it's not even it like the first realization you have is, oh, it's not forever. But then you have to realize it's not even when they turn 18 that they're going to stop wanting that any minute now, frankly.
Yep.
And so literally tonight might be the last time I get to do that. And I will miss it, even though I don't particularly like it, or I wouldn't particularly like it if and so I struggle with that. And bedtime's a frustrating time. I don't get a lot of compliance, so it's tough. I really struggle with it. But man, I mean, if you one of the things one of the tactics that I use is I cordon off the time and I just decide I'm going to like it. I just decide that I'm going to enjoy it. And it turns out that if you do that, it works.
Yep. Absolutely. I think I love how forthright you are that bedtime isn't your favorite activity, right? Like you wouldn't just volunteer normally to be like, yeah, bedtime. That's great. I'll get them to brush their teeth. I'll get them to do all that stuff. But you're building a structure there that your kids know that you are there at night, every night that you're there to do it, to read to them now, to be present with them now, that I think is going to pay off as your kids get older, right? So when you do have those quiet moments together as they get older, whether that's you guys are sitting down for, maybe it's just one of the kids and you are sitting down for a meal together, right? Or it could be that you and your son are waiting around at the gym for basketball practice to start and you guys are just hanging out, shooting baskets together, that they will feel that closeness and that safety with you, that they can come to you with whatever's on their mind, right?
Yeah.
Because right now, what stresses them out is very different than what stresses them out as teenagers, and probably what will stress them out as 20-somethings, 30-somethings, whatever that may be. But you're building that foundation now that I think pays off in the long run because you're there, you're present, you're active in their bedtime routines, right?
Yeah.
Which they're going to recognize that, oh, dad is there for me in those quiet times, right? And I know wherever I am, however old I am, that I can go back to dad and be like, hey, dad, I got something on my mind, right?
Yeah. I think this is this is a touchstone that is really important, is that you want to be the kind of parent that your kids can come to when they're in crisis, no matter what. And they need to feel that's the emotional security that I was talking about.
Right.
And man, you have to lay the groundwork for that from the very beginning. Right. And they need to see you as somebody who's worth coming to, and that isn't going to make them miserable for doing it. Right. It's going to make it better for them. And it is so much more important now, even than it was when we were kids, because they have a device in their pocket,
right,
that will instantly connect them to an unlimited amount of porn, an unlimited amount of gambling, an unlimited amount of games, an unlimited amount of things that will short circuit their brains in ways that can ruin their life. If they can't come to you, their father, to deal with those challenges, what are they going to do? Who are they going to turn to?
Right. Right. You're putting them at a disadvantage.
It's even more than that. I think you're setting them up to fail.
Yep.
I mean, It's not even just, oh yeah, you're a couple yards behind the next guy. You're not going. I mean, how do you win? How do you win against the online gambling?
Right.
It will rewire your brain such that you need it. It's like doing heroin. How do you win against heroin? You can't.
Right.
If they do heroin, they're kind of done for. And it's not like that will absolutely, no question, ruin your life, but it ruins most of the people's lives that do it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So on this topic of things that kind of strengthen your connection or relationship with your kids, beyond just the bedtime routine, is there a small repeatable practice that for you that strengthens that father-child connection?
Yeah, I think my favorite one right now, and there's probably there's so I already mentioned one of them, which is I reframe I want to try to reframe the activity in a way that, like, oh, this is something I enjoy. And it turns out you can do that. And I got that from reading about people who like endure real serious physical hardships. There was a guest on my podcast named Eric Davis who he wrote, the way that I got introduced to him is he wrote a book by the name of Raising Men, which is the name of my podcast. And so that's how I found out about him. And I was just so impressed. He's kind of in my area and he was a guest on my podcast, but he was a Navy SEAL. And those guys, like, part of what he writes about in his book is a lot of the, that training that they go through is about reframing the activity. And he had a friend, it was early in the morning and it was cold and they were standing on the shore and they were about to have to do some long swim in the really, really cold ocean. And the anticipation of that swim for the guy he was standing next to was so much, and it was so brutal for him. He was thinking about it and he just couldn't get over it. And he ended up ringing the bell, which is the way that they quit. And he didn't ring the bell when the swim got too hard. He rang the bell when the anticipation of the swim got so brutal that he couldn't bring himself to do it. And for Eric, he spent his high school years getting up at 5 a.m. and going out to surf. And so to him, sitting on the beach, watching the waves, getting ready to get in the water, that was positive anticipation. He was excited about it. Now, it was going to be a physically grueling activity, and obviously it wasn't the same thing as going out to surf. It's not like it's fun, but to him, he created, in his mind was created the pathways of, standing on the beach and looking out at the ocean. That's a good thing. And you can literally do that with anything. You can literally get yourself to enjoy just about anything. You can get yourself to enjoy working out. Is tough and it hurts, and your body's going to hurt afterwards. But if you get yourself to enjoy it, then you'll anticipate it. You'll enjoy the feeling of the muscles hurting, because that's what growth feels like, right? And it's about that. It's that way with everything. And so that's one thing. The other thing is, man, put that freaking phone away.
Yep.
Get the devices. So one of my guests made such practical suggestions. Is there's no phones in bedrooms. And I've heard this elsewhere, but there's a place in the house where we put our phones and our tablets and all that stuff to charge, and that's where they stay. And when we're doing family time, that's where they are. And so there's something that is pernicious about these devices that we need to. It's everything. It's, as with everything, there's a tension. There's an aspect that's a problem, and there's an aspect that's an opportunity. And the opportunity is you're connected more to everybody. You can work from your phone. Literally, you can be anywhere on the planet and be connected in good ways. But it's also bad. And there's also problems associated with it. You need to learn to manage the problems and take advantage of the opportunities. And one of the ways to do that is you got to define this family time, and it's inviolable, and the devices get put up.
Oh yeah, for sure. Unless you have allowed your kids to use their phones whenever they want. And then, like, once you start the habit, it's hard to pull back from the habit.
Yeah.
All right. So one more question before we get into the speed round. When you zoom out, say 15 years from now, your kids are in college, out of the house, wherever they may be, what do you hope your kids say about who you were during these busy years?
Yeah, I hope my kids don't recognize how busy it was. I hope they don't know how stressful my life was. I hope that I did a good job of insulating them from that. That would be great. If they look back and go, man, I didn't even realize my dad had a job. That would be great.
Right. Yeah. It says a lot about identity there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, this is actually the first moment I've had that realization.
Yeah. It's awesome. I love that. You could have gone in any direction, right? But you cared about is that your kids will see their childhood as their childhood.
Yeah.
Not as dad's time to freak out or dad's time to be at the office, right? It's like their childhood is their childhood, and that's what you want them to remember it for. Because life's not always going to be like childhood, right?
Yeah.
But there should be, you hope that you've given them something positive to look back on.
Yeah.
And have built up this well of strength of emotion and humanity so they can do that for the next generation, but also do that for themselves as they become adults. Right. It's a great answer. I love it.
And I'll tell you, like, my parents did that for me.
Yeah.
But my dad was a workaholic. My dad's career, he was a really, really excellent sportscaster. Maybe one of the best sportscasters there ever was. He was really good. And it was his central life. His whole life was being on TV and being a sportscaster. And it gave us a really great lifestyle. And so he was the opposite of what we're talking about here. He wasn't present in the home. He was working or he was sleeping. And then when he woke up, he went to work. And then he got home at 2:00 in the morning and he slept until after I left for school. And then he got up and went to work again. And he was crushing it. And he was tremendously successful. But he also married my mom, who was unbelievable. She created the household, and we didn't suffer from my dad not being involved in the way that he was because she was so strong and she was so amazing. And so in spite of, I mean, I think the rules have changed somewhat. And so, but in spite of the fact that my dad wasn't the paragon of the kind of father that I want to be.
Right.
But he still provided that for me.
Yep.
And I really admire that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Important point. All right, we're going to go from the serious to the not so serious.
All right,
now.
Let's do it.
Let's do the speed round. It's nothing about anything, but we're going to go for it. 5 quick questions. First one is, what's the first kids show theme song that comes to mind?
No question, it's Bluey.
Bluey.
No question.
Yeah. What was your very first job?
So there's actually 2 answers to that question. My very, very first job was I started a company that was a hay baling company. I lived in South Lake, Texas, which is near Dallas. And when I was 13 years old, and I must have been, my brother was 13. I was 16. And I borrowed a truck and a trailer, and I would go out to the hay fields and load up hay on the trailer and deliver it for 50 cents a bale. And I ended up hiring my brother and his college roommate, and my dad would help. My dad, who was like a high-paid sportscaster on TV and stuff like that, would literally get out and work all day on Saturday in the hay fields with me. Which is moving hay is the worst job on the history of the planet. Well, it's not the worst job. It is one of It is very, very tough in the heat of the Texas sun. It is itchy. You have to wear long sleeves and thick clothes. So you're very, very hot. It is horrible. It is backbreaking. It will teach you that you do not want a physical job. You will do whatever you can to work in an office when you call it. It will teach you to go to college because you want to make sure that that is not what you end up having to do. I have a great deal of respect for people who work in those because of that. So that was my very first job. I started this company doing hay baling. I even hired my little 13-year-old brother to drive the truck. And but then my first kind of real job, I worked at a Dairy Queen.
Nice.
And that was also backbreaking, tough work.
I bet. Would you rather spend 24 hours with a toddler-sized T-Rex or a T-Rex-sized toddler?
Absolutely a toddler-sized T-Rex. I don't even really have to think about it. I'm used to getting bitten. That's okay. I'm pretty tough. I got tough skin, and at least the toddler-sized T-Rex can't reach the counter and get ketchup all over the kitchen.
Good point. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Again, this is so easy for me. It's Piano Man.
Piano Man.
Yep.
Classic.
I love that song. I'm good at it. It is absolutely the first song I sing. And everyone is kind of like, wow, he's not bad.
Awesome. Finally, what's the weirdest thing you've ever carried around in your bag, briefcase, or pockets?
Probably, this is a tough one. Of all of these, this is the tough one.
Couldn't all be easy.
Yeah, they couldn't all be easy. I have this, I've recently taken up playing golf for various complicated reasons. And I've always hated golf. I absolutely hate golf, or at least I did until recently. And now I'm like starting to get really passionate about it. And I have this divot tool that is like a switchblade. And it's like hardcore. It is sort of like this interesting juxtaposition between this kind of gentleman's game of golf and this, Sharks versus the Jets kind of switchblade divot tool. And that's probably the weirdest thing that I can think of that I've carried around in my pockets or bag.
Nice. Love that. All right. We survived the speed round. Appreciate that. Before we wrap up, I want to make sure people know where to find you and how to go deeper into your work.
Yeah. So the podcast is called Raising Men, and it's on YouTube, Spotify, podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a website called raising.men. In fact, one of the reasons that I kind of left it up to fate to decide whether I was even going to start the podcast, I decided, you know what, I've been thinking about it for 2 years, and I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I came up with the name Raising Men. I thought, wow, that's a really good name. I'm going, tell you what, I was on a walk. I was in downtown San Francisco. I was on a business trip, and I was on this walk. I said, I'm going to get back to the hotel. And I'm going to find out if I found out about the .men top level domain. And if raising.men is available, I'll start the podcast. And so I went back to my hotel room. I bought the domain name, and I was committed at that point.
Love it.
And so, yeah. Check us out on our website. We're on all the socials, raisingmen_podcast. And definitely, DM me. I love to hear from people, and let me know what you think.
Awesome. I'm going to put all those links in the show notes so people can find Raising Men. Shaun, I really appreciate you joining me today, talking about the way you approach your work, your life. You're not speaking from a pedestal, right? You're in it. You're asking the hard questions as a dad, right? I have two young kids, and you're doing it alongside the rest of us, right? There's lots of dads out there, and you're not afraid to talk about it. And I appreciate that. I'm grateful for the honesty and the clarity that you brought to this conversation. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate it. And finally, before you go, if you're a dad listening to this and you find yourself in between, navigating a season that feels different, head to gap2gig.com, subscribe to the Gap to Gig newsletter. It comes out every Friday, and it's a quieter space to reflect on work, life, and what really matters right now. And if this conversation resonated, consider sending it to another dad who might need to hear it. Until next time, I'm Michael Jacobs. Thanks for showing up and listening to Gap to Gig.